3. State regulation of the economy and the impoverishment of the working class in the USA and England in the post-war period. Anti-fascist war. The war against the Hitlerite coalition was a struggle for liberation and anti-fascism, with the masses aiming to defeat fascist aggressors and Hitler's oppressive order. Monopoly interests. Capitalist monopolies in the anti-Hitler coalition used the war to maximize profits, exploiting the popular anti-fascist sentiment to increase pressure on the working class. Post-war hopes. The working class hoped for post-war improvements in democratic rights, living standards, and economic security. Failed promises. Post-war reality showed that promises of a capitalism free from crises, unemployment, and poverty were unfounded. Instead, the working class faced increased exploitation. Unemployment crisis. The end of the war brought a surge in unemployment in the U.S., worsened by the Korean War's focus on military production at the expense of civilian goods. Tax burden. High taxes, driven by post-war militarization and imperialist policies, placed a significant financial burden on workers. Wage stagnation. Despite post-war strikes, nominal wages couldn't keep pace with rising living costs, exacerbated by a misleading cost of living index from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Exploitation tactics. Monopolies maintained profits by freezing or reducing wages relative to inflation, leveraging the flawed cost of living index. Social inequality. The working class faced a decline in real wages compared to wartime levels, contradicting claims of a prosperous post-war capitalist society. Bourgeois statistics. Official statistics are criticized for not fully reflecting the fall in real wages post-World War II, often presenting misleading data to portray the war as beneficial for workers. Real wages decline. Despite claims of higher post-war wages compared to 1939, real wages have decreased significantly, as evidenced by alternative indices like the Electrical and Radio Union Index, which show wages consistently below 1939 levels from 1946 to 1952. Cost of living and wages. The Bureau of Labor Statistics Index is deemed unreliable. Progressive economists and union data suggest real wages have decreased, contradicting official narratives. Living standards and consumption. The average earnings of American workers have not kept pace with the minimum subsistence level required, with a significant gap between wages and essential living costs. In 1953, the average weekly earnings covered only 68.7% of necessary expenses. Food consumption decline. There is a marked decrease in the per capita consumption of essential food items in the post-war U.S., indicating a decline in living standards and nutrition. Case studies of workers. Stories of workers like James Davis and the Murphy family illustrate the struggles faced by American workers, who often cannot afford adequate food, housing, or medical care. Medical care is particularly highlighted as an unaffordable luxury for many. Economic hardships. Many workers, even those earning above the average, live in debt and struggle to make ends meet, highlighting the broader economic struggles faced by the working class. Inequality and impoverishment. The document argues that there is both relative and absolute impoverishment of the working class in post-war America, where the majority's living standards have decreased despite economic growth and wealth accumulation by a minority. Conclusion. The document criticizes state regulation of the economy for failing to improve the working class's living standards, emphasizing the need for more accurate and representative economic data. State monopoly capitalism in England leads to the impoverishment of workers and enrichment of monopolists, similar to the USA. Official statistics obscure the true cost of living during and after the war, showing nominal wage increases that don't reflect the reality of rising costs. J.L. Nicholson of the Oxford Institute of Statistics argues that real wages for English workers fell by 6% from 1938 to 1942. Consumption declined significantly during the war, with expenditures on food, clothing, and household items falling substantially from 1938 levels. Post-war, unemployment increased significantly, with official statistics underreporting the true number of unemployed, particularly women and partially unemployed individuals. Despite expectations of improvement, the English working class faced impoverishment post-war, while monopolists prospered. The post-war period saw increased taxes and rising prices, exacerbating the financial strain on the working class. Income and indirect taxes increased sharply post-war, impacting the working class's financial burden significantly. Social insurance contributions rose under new laws, further straining workers' finances. Increased taxation was linked to rising military spending, with budget adjustments pushing for more defense-oriented production. In 1950, taxes accounted for approximately 32 to 33% of workers' wages, highlighting economic challenges for the working class. Official statistics reportedly manipulated cost of living indexes to obscure the true rise in prices, misleadingly indicating stable prices and living standards. A new, temporary retail price index was introduced in 1947, further distorting the perception of price movements. Despite efforts to manipulate data, even the revised indexes couldn't hide the decline in real wages during the post-war period. Post-war earnings and prices. British workers' earnings have steadily fallen post-war, even using the understated official retail price index. The decline in wages is exacerbated by rising direct taxes, unemployment, and an actual increase in the cost of living. Criticism of official indices. Some economists from Oxford University criticized the official cost of living index, offering their calculations. Everyday reality reveals the inadequacy of official data on the cost of living. Military regulation and price increases. Post-war England maintained military regulations like high taxes and wage freezes while prices rose. Prices for various goods, including food and non-food items, increased significantly in 1947 and continued annually. Impact of the Korean War. Consumer goods prices surged, particularly after the Korean War began. Significant price increases were noted in essential goods such as milk, eggs, cheese, and clothing. Rising costs, 1946 to 1952. From 1946 to 1952, prices of essentials like fresh meat, butter, cheese, and eggs rose dramatically. Clothing, textiles, shoes, coal, rent, and public transport fares also increased. Retail price index discrepancies. The new retail price index fails to reflect true purchasing power decline. The cost of living index by London and Cambridge Institutes shows a significant increase compared to pre-war levels but is still underestimated. Worker impoverishment. Working class consumption declined, contrary to promises of better living standards. By 1953, weekly food rations were insufficient and often unaffordable for many. Consumption decline. There was a noticeable decline in per capita consumption of essential food items post-war. Consumption levels for key foods in 1952 were significantly lower than in 1938. Comparison with early 20th century. Post-war consumption of many goods was lower than levels from 50 years prior, indicating a significant drop in living standards. Data from The Economist shows per capita consumption of several food items in 1951 was below 1,900 levels. Industrial goods consumption. Despite a 7% population increase from 1935 to 1951, sales and per capita consumption of industrial goods fell. The decline is primarily attributed to the working class due to state monopoly capitalism.